and welcome back to another episode of the Practice Players Podcast. This is going to be episode number 4, and as always, I'm David.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Nick.
And I'm Peter.
And we are the Practice Players. This episode, very happy to have Peter on. Met him through something called the Manager Connection. Just a very good, genuine soul within the industry. Perfect person to have on the podcast. So we'll just start it off as always. Peter, for the people listening who don't know you, if you could just explain your journey up until this point, sort of how you got started in basketball and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me on. I apologize. My computer froze for like a second, and I didn't know that was
Nah, you
where I was
good.
supposed to go. But so my journey, I played high school basketball in Northeast Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. Grew up, in the LeBron Cavs era, so that was always pretty exciting for me. I've been at Valparaiso University in Northwest Indiana for 7 years, 3 years as a student manager, 2 years as a graduate assistant, and this is my second year as the director of operations. So I've been very fortunate to be able to advance and be able to be a part of the program, be part of the university institution. And so this is in the midst of year 2 for me as the director of operations at Valparaiso.
Peter, I have a question for you. What would you say is the major difference for you now that you're a director of basketball operations between what you're doing now and what you were doing when you were a student manager?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think on the plus side, I'm much more involved in the basketball side. That's been a fun difference. I think as a student manager, you're still, fly on the wall or you're rebounding or whatever it might be with the basketball side. But, I get to do whether it's video or sitting on game plan meetings, things like that. I get to, be a part of the basketball side of it, which is a lot of fun. I would say, when you're a student manager, your job is, to support everybody else all the time, always, right? And as ops, it's kind of the same way to a certain extent, but I think there's 10 things that I'm in charge of, that I have to think about on a daily basis, right? That keep the program going. So it's like, I come into work and I'm trying to figure out, all right, what do I have to do specifically as part of my responsibility, as opposed to, all right, how am I helping all these other different people on a day-to-day basis? But I think the biggest difference is the relationships with players, kind of navigating that. I think you guys probably are all experiencing it right now. When I was a manager, they were my friends. They were my boys, right? So that was easy for me to build those relationships because they were my friends. And then as a GA, it was kind of the same deal, but it was kind of towing that line a little bit. But then when you're on the staff, they're not your friends, right? You're not their boy, right? But you still have to build those strong relationships with them. So kind of figuring out, all right, how am I a staff member, but I can still build this strong relationship in a different way than being their friend, I think has been the biggest difference for me. But I also think at the same time, there's a lot of things that I learned as a student manager that helped me in the position now that I'm really grateful for. I think you'd be surprised how much carryover there would be from being a student manager and being a staff member, and the lessons and experiences that you have.
And then one question I want to ask. I've heard a lot of good things about Valpo from Jake Diebler, our associate head coach over here at Ohio State, obviously. But in your opinion, what makes Valpo a special place, seeing that you've been there for 7 years going now?
Yeah, for me, originally, and as part of my faith was such a huge part of it, a faith-based institution. I work for and with a bunch of, strong Christians, and a lot of our players are that way as well. For me, I think it's just it was an unbelievable place to, we're a Division I school and a really good conference in Missouri Valley Conference, but we're a small school with a small operating budget, but the responsibilities are still there, right? So it's an unbelievable place to. I got a lot of experience in a lot of areas very early, which was really huge for my career. We've had pretty much the same staff for the last 4 or 5 years, so I've been able to build strong relationships with them. and how we've had our same staff. And so I think the combination of those things, just the experience that I've gotten, the ability to take on big roles and take on responsibility at a young age, and build strong relationships amongst the staff of people that I've worked with for a long time, as well as I had a great experience when I was a student there, and this school means a lot to me. So it's a definitely a very underrated place. It's a very special, unique place. But I'm fortunate to have been there for as long as I have.
I wanted to, not really a question, just I want you to try and give recommendations for people just trying to get a job in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's another really good question, because I think there's a lot of people. I mean, you guys are probably included in that, right? Trying to figure out, how am I navigating this? How am I getting to where I want to go? I think the biggest thing, and there's a lot of ways I guess it could go, but where I'll go is, where do you add value, right? So as you're breaking in, the value is not always going to be your basketball mind, right? It's not going to be usually recruiting. It's usually going to be a skill set, whether that's Photoshop, player development, something along those lines. Those are the ways that you add value immediately early on, right? I would say along with, a super strong work ethic, right? If that's almost the requirement, right? So if you're not willing to work, then it's not going to happen. You're not going to make it, right? Part of it is what are you willing to sacrifice? How important is it to you, really? Is it something that you really want to do? So I guess to summarize, if you're trying to break in, find ways that you can add value. So if that's Photoshop, if that's video, if that's player development, and then make sure that you're willing to make some sacrifices, work hard, do things to take stuff off people's plates. All that stuff is so huge. And then obviously it's a who business. So trying to network to the best of your ability. And I would say that's also adding value. I think that was the biggest thing that I've learned recently in terms of networking, is it's adding value to other people's lives, to where you're not really asking anything for return until you really maybe need something. People will tend to see that when you're helping them do something, rather than just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" If that makes any sense. So I would say trying to break in, trying to advance, make sure this is what you really want to do, make sure it's something that you're willing to sacrifice for, and find ways that you personally can uniquely add value to programs, coaches, whoever it might be.
Yeah, Peter, I have a question, because I feel like myself and maybe Nick and Dave have definitely thought about this before. The industry is such a fast moving industry, and you're moving all the time. How do you take, maybe having a job for a couple of years and then having to move to a completely whole different location and a whole different life? Can you kind of describe the mental part of that, or having a family and having people that you have to move from? Can we talk about that? Because I feel like that gets unnoticed.
No, I think that's a really good question. I haven't had to go through this yet, but I have, like you guys, I definitely have thought about it. I guess, for me, location is not necessarily important to me. I think that sounds kind of exciting, that I might be able to go to some different places. I haven't done that yet. I've only been in Valparaiso, Indiana, but that's okay. But the fact that I might be able to go to some different places is really exciting to me. I grew up in Ohio, and I only lived in Ohio my entire life. So I really only lived in two places. So that part definitely excites me. I think the family part, I haven't experienced that either, but I'm mentally preparing for that, right? Because I know that that's challenging. I guess what I would say is I have a lot of mentors in my life that I think have done really well in that aspect. They manage their time well. They're very present with their family members. And so I think that I've had a lot of people that I look up to, that I've seen do that very well. And that gives me a lot of confidence that I can do that. It is a challenge, right? It's not a normal lifestyle that we live. So I think, communicating that openly and making sure you find somebody that is on board with all of that. But I think I've had some really good people show me that it's definitely possible and that you can do it. Having a family, being a coach, and doing both really well is definitely possible. But I'm with you, man. I think about that all the time, and I haven't had to move a whole lot of places, but I'm excited for when the time comes to see the U.S. and experience some new places. I think that kind of answer your question. Did I get at it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, and I'll ask you another question. This is about what you're doing right now. Now that you're kind of in your second year as being the DOBO, I know our DOBO does a lot. So I kind of wanted to ask you, what strategies do you use to stay organized as being a director of basketball operations in a Division I program?
Yeah, that's a super good question. I would say the two things that I do the most. We have this. I don't know if you guys have it. It's called Teamworks. Maybe you guys have something similar. I use Teamwork. Teamworks is like my savior. I think our players and coaches make fun of me for it because I use it so much. But it's calendar, it's communication, it just keeps that whole part of it organized. So with our schedule, with our travel, itineraries, all that stuff, and then our players have it on their phone, so they can just look on Teamworks and they can see exactly everything that's going on. So it helps keep them organized on what we're doing. And then the other thing is just Google Sheets. Honestly, I have a Google Sheet for probably everything, whether it's our budget, whether it's our film schedule, whether it's our home game meals budget. Just I probably have 5 or 6 Google Sheets open at a given time. And then I just have like a notepad on my desk because I've kind of found that so much stuff comes up throughout the day. And like I said earlier, the biggest difference is, when you're a manager, you're a GA, you're waiting for somebody to kind of tell you what to do, and you can kind of anticipate and figure it out. But when it comes to team travel, no one's laying it out saying, hey, you make sure you have a bus, make sure you have a plane, make sure you have a hotel, or making sure that's all ready to go. You kind of have to take the lead and the initiative on that. So I found that planning out my day, writing down the 10 things I got to do, checklist next to me, that always really helps. But a lot of this I had to learn on the fly last year, find out what is best for your organization system. But I would say Teamworks, Google Sheets, Notepad, all that stuff is so helpful to me. And I've just kind of learned to overuse those things. So if I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about something right now, I'm typing it out and put it in the Google Sheet. I'm putting it on Teamworks, whatever it might be. So over communicating is what I try to do most of the time. That's a really good question.
Now, this might be the most hard-hitting question that we're going to ask on the show. I see a lot over basketball Twitter and manager Twitter. Valpo has a nice little manager squad going there. What's up with that? How you guys looking this year?
Yeah, we got a great team, man. Nobody wants to play us. We probably ask every single road show if somebody wants to play, and nobody wants to play us. So I don't know how you guys have experienced this, but when I was a legit student manager, we had a pretty good team too. But our GAs were either managers or former walk-ons. But we would go play on another school, and they'd have one of their former players, like who played in the rotation, was a good player. He would play in the game. So 1 year we played Illinois State, and Chris Duhon was an assistant at Illinois State. He played in the NBA. He played at Duke, played in the NBA. He played in the manager game. So. I guess the flip is nice this year. So we have 2 graduate assistants that both are former players. One played at Michigan State, then transferred to Valpo, was medically disqualified, and now he plays. And then another one of our players one of our GAs was a 1,000-point scorer, 4-year player for us, played 3 years overseas. So having those 2 play helps helps a lot because I'm okay, but I move the ball and all that stuff. But those two help a lot, man. But yeah, we're trying to get some more games here. We were very unhappy with our ranking, so we thought we were ranked a little too low, man. So we're trying to move it up.
I feel like we need to talk with the manager games. I feel like there needs to be some sort of rule book. Like if you're on the road, you can have like 1 or 2 people on staff play, but like home teams should only be managed. There needs to be some sort of description there because. I mean, we'll play mid-major teams, and we just play like their whole coaching staff. Like the managers don't even play. I'm like, this isn't even a manager game at this point.
That's us, man. We got one manager that's pretty good, and he always plays, and he a couple of times led us in the scoring. but the rest of our managers are just okay. So it's our two GAs that help us out a lot. So
Yeah.
Very good question, David. I appreciate
Yeah.
it, man.
Now, back to a more serious note now. I wanted to ask you, what's your why? You know, this industry is very cutthroat, long hours, you know, not a lot of recognition, a lot of times not even a lot of pay. So what keeps you going, like just day to day and motivated to continue?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I guess before I answer, I would say that if in reference to one of the other questions you guys asked, if you better, if you want to work in basketball, you better have a really good why. And if your why is money or fame or attention, it's just not going to work, because you're going to have to deal with more stuff that's going to outweigh that, or you're not going to get any of that to start, right? So if you're wanting to work in basketball, you better have a really, really good why and a really strong why. For me, it's the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. And I have no other career options or career interests or anything else that would possibly interest me. I feel a very strong calling. I'm very strong in my faith, and I felt a very strong calling since I was, 14, 15 years old, that this is what God wants me to do with my life. And so He's given me the skill sets and the drive and the motivation and everything that I might possibly need to do this. And so it's felt not even like a choice for me. It's felt like this is like an obligation. Like this is what I have to do, and I have to put everything I have into it, because this is what I was created to do, if that makes any sense. I don't want to get too deep, but it's a really good question, David. And yeah, you got to deal with a lot of stuff in this industry. We're kind of going through right now. We're struggling at the moment. And we work every day of the week, and we travel and do all this stuff. And it's like every time I think about maybe I want to do something else, it's like, what else would I do? This is what I was supposed to do. So that would be my why. I feel extremely called to do this. My faith compels me to, and I feel that I have skill sets that might be beneficial in some other areas, but I think this is where it's best to use, and I feel a passion to do it. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. That was a good question, Dave. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, that was a phenomenal answer too. And then one last question I wanted to get into here, and feel free to answer this as in-depth or not in-depth as you're comfortable and allowed to. Mm-hmm. Going through, like you said, just a tough few game skid like you guys currently are right now, what do you do as sort of a leader and a older person to those players to help, keep level heads, keep the team going through tough stretches?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I don't know if I have the exact answer, but I can share what I'm trying to do right now. I'll be honest, we got an unbelievable group this year. They really have done a good job of they show up every day. They haven't really hung their heads. They haven't really gotten down with themselves or with each other. They show up every day, and they work, and they're coachable. I think the biggest thing to remember, and even now at this point, which is crazy, is that the season is so long. The season it may feel short and feels like it goes by quickly, but there's always an opportunity to make the season back, if that makes any sense. So yeah, we didn't have a great start in conference, but we have a stretch coming up that we can maybe possibly work back those games. We've had a year where we started off conference 4-0 and 5-1 in the same year, and we ended up finishing 7-11. So it can go both ways, depending on, you could start really well and you could finish poorly. So I've tried to remind our guys that as much as possible, that even in the middle of the season, we still got, 16, 17 games left. And the beauty of college basketball is that everybody gets an opportunity to make the NCAA tournament. So it's not usually very common, but even if your season doesn't go the way that you think it was going to go, you can still put together 4 wins in the first week of March and make the NCAA tournament. So I would say there's always that opportunity to get better. So basically just trying to remind our guys that, it sounds cliche, but trusting the process, and what are we learning from these losses, and how can we fix some things, and how can we improve. And that's the beauty and the struggle of conference play, is that, okay, we lost on Bradley on Saturday. Gosh, that really sucked that we did that. But guess what? We played Belmont on Tuesday, so it's a very quick turnaround. That 2 days later we're playing again. So it's you want to get rid of that loss and try to get better, but you got an opportunity coming up right away, which I think is the beauty of college basketball, is you just get more chances immediately, no matter how you played the game before.
Yeah.
So we've just tried. I shouldn't say me. We as a staff have collectively tried to remind our guys to do that, and they've honestly been great so far. I mean, they show up every day ready to practice, and they're attentive and trying to get better too, trying to help us figure it out too. So, but yeah, it's definitely challenging. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but we'll see if we can turn it around here.
Yeah, I like that response a lot. It reminds me, like our staff here, they always say the most important game is the next game.
Yeah, I love that. That's it, man. That's it, because it's true. Like you play all these games, and it's like, yeah, okay, you lost a tough one to Purdue, but in a couple of days you played Minnesota. Or you played Maryland in a couple of days. It's like you just quit. It's such a quick turnaround. It's like, all right, well, great. I get an opportunity to turn this around in a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I have one more question before we get into our storyline of the week. As a DOBO, I know a lot of your responsibility is scheduling and planning, but what parts of your job are you able to go into, like, the coaching aspect? Because our DOBO last year, who was my boss, is now an assistant coach at Louisville. But toward the end of last year, when he realized he was going to get that job, he started kind of taking more of, like, the coaching precaution. Is there at any point during the season where you maybe shift toward that, or maybe in the off season, when spring and summer workouts, maybe you lean more toward that role, or have you ever thought about it that way?
No, that's an unbelievable question, because I think that's where a lot of DOBOs get stuck, right? I don't want to be a DOBO forever. I love it. I don't want. It's not my dream, not my goal. But a lot of people can get stuck in this role because head coaches will want assistant coaches with basketball experience, or basketball knowledge, basketball experience, X's and O's recruiting experience, right? So a lot of times you don't get that as a DOBO. I've been very fortunate in a couple ways. The first way is my boss understands that, and he's really challenged me on numerous occasions to contribute basketball-wise. He asks for everybody's opinion in meetings. That's very uncommon. And so I have to come prepared to meetings with my basketball ideas, right? Whether it's offensively, defensively, how can we improve what I think about personnel? So he's challenged me in that way to contribute in meetings and things like that. So that's been really helpful. The other way I've been really fortunate is the new rule that came out that, that says when one staff member is on the road recruiting or not present or sick, whatever it might be, I'm able to be on the floor. And so since we are such a small staff, I'm the only support staff member, and we have 2 GAs. They're graduate managers. They're on the floor anyway. So if one of our coaches is on the road recruiting, I'm basically a coach for the day. So I'm sure you guys see it too. There's a lot, our coaches are on the road recruiting all the time. So I've been very fortunate to be able to get experience that way. But I still do a lot of our video. We kind of divide it up amongst myself and our 2 GAs. So I'm able to still help with scouts. That's always really helpful. Being able to watch other teams scout, game plan, things like that. The player development side, not being able to be on the floor as often as I was when I was a GA, that part of it. But I think I built that skill set when I was a GA. But we were such a small staff that I'm lucky that I can still be a part of a lot of the basketball side of it. And so I was also determined that I don't want to get stuck in this role. I want to make sure I'm still developing as a coach. But I would say if you're feeling that way, if I think what your boss did was probably, your former boss was probably pretty smart. Just diving into that stuff. There's so many resources now, so many podcasts like you guys are doing, and videos, things like that. You could really dive into some stuff as you're preparing. But then at the same time, I've tried my best to, keep my ear to recruiting. There's a lot of people that you could talk to, whether it's scouting services or, high school coaches, things like that you maybe not recruiting players, but you kind of know what's going on. So if you are in that position of an assistant coach, who, whatever that school could target, who you could bring in, what you think about certain players, things like that. So, that's a really good question, though. I think a lot of DOBOs probably struggle with that, and I know I did. So I've tried to work around it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that was phenomenal. If anyone has any other statements or questions, if not, we'll get into the storyline of the week. All right, let's
I'll
get right into it.
All right, let's do it.
So yeah, Peter, every episode we do a storyline of the week, just something exciting that happened, something noteworthy that happened. It can be a game, news, recruiting, really just anything relating to the game, or it could also be in the future, something you're looking forward to. So today we have Dan and then Nick, and then we'll end it with yours.
All right.
All right, I'll start us off with the Kansas State Wildcats this week. I don't know if you saw, Peter, but the Kansas State Wildcats went 2-0 this week. They won 2 road games at Texas and at Baylor, which are 2 of the toughest places to play in the country, both ranked opponents when they were unranked. Now they're number 11, according to today's poll. But Marquise Newell and Keontae Johnson were phenomenal in these games. Newell, I believe, combined for 55 in the 2 games, and Johnson 46. It was outstanding. They scored 116 points at Texas. And I know the whole Chris Beard thing for Texas, they're not the same team as they've been through the first month and a half of the season, but Kansas State has looked phenomenal, and they were projected to be 9th in the Big 12 out of 10 teams. So for them to have the start that they're having is very impressive.
Mine, I want to go into a matchup I'm excited for. Staying in the Big 12, Iowa State is going to Kansas this Saturday, and obviously Kansas is one of the toughest places to play in the country, but Iowa State just picked up a road win against TCU, and now they're 14th in the country going to Kansas. I'm really looking forward to watching that game this Saturday. I think those two programs are very well coached and very fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to watching that game.
And then do you have one for us, Peter?
Oh, it's my turn. I thought you were going, Dan.
Yeah.
My bad.
Oh, no, you're good.
Yeah, I guess I'll plug a mid-major and a former manager. Florida Atlantic, 14-1 start to the year. Dusty May doing a really good job. Always cool to see former managers doing well, and he actually just became like the school's all-time leader in career wins. He's only been there for 5 or 6 years, but they beat UAB last week, which was a pretty impressive win. So Florida Atlantic, mid-major, former manager, head coach, 14-1, which is pretty cool.
I like that shout out. I connected with Dusty through the manager connection, same
There
thing
you go.
we met through, and he was a phenomenal person, just very insightful, valuable time. He's a great person, so it's awesome to see them doing well.
There you go, man.
But I thought this was a phenomenal episode. Want to thank you again for coming on, Peter. Really appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you guys having this. It was a lot of fun. So, and if you guys need anything from me, please just let me know.
Appreciate it a ton. As always, Peter's socials will be on the Instagram if you want to go shoot him a follow, connect, challenge Valpo to a manager game. They're looking for some competition, so you know where to reach him at. But this was a phenomenal episode, and as always, PPP out.
Peace.